This video is brought to you by Uncommon Goods. Use the link in the description down below to get 15% off of your next gift. What kind of gift? Well, you're actually just gonna have to stay tuned for the answer to that question. Welcome, intrepid travelers. Please, please come in out of the dark. It is me, your spirit guide for this very spooky episode of Spooky Skeleton Time. Actually, I'm just kidding. I'm actually not the guide for Spooky Skeleton Time. In case you couldn't tell, it's actually me, Offhand Disney, and I'm gonna be your host for today's episode of Offhand Disney. I just thought it'd be a little festive around here, you know? Do something for Halloween. It's a Halloween special. I had to dress up as a skeleton guy. Probably should have scripted this intro a little bit better. There we go. Now, Halloween is the spookiest time of the year, and what better attraction to talk about during the Halloween season than the Haunted Mansion? The Haunted Mansion is iconic. My favorite Disney ride of all time, one of the most iconic Disney attractions of all time, and I think what makes it so wonderful is that nobody really knows the story. I mean, there is a bit of a loose patchwork of things that we can put together. We're going on a tour through a haunted house led by the ghost host and seeing different characters as we go through the Haunted Mansion, but what's the actual backstory behind these ghosts? What are these ghosts' stories? What does the Hatbox Ghost have in common with Constance Hatchaway? What does the bride have in common with Pickwick up there on the chandelier? Today, I thought it would be fun to go through the Haunted Mansion and talk about the very interesting, macabre, and sometimes scary backstories of some of its inhabitants. The untold backstories of the Haunted Mansion. So grab yourself some trick-or-treating candy, sit down on the couch with your loved one as we go into the depths of New Orleans Square or Liberty Square, depending on which coast you're on, and dive just a little bit deeper into the mythos of the Haunted Mansion. Really hard to breathe in this thing. I might have to just ditch this for the rest of the video. I think it must be known, I must make it clear that one of my favorite portraits in the Haunted Mansion isn't even a changing portrait. I love all of the changing portraits. They're all so beautiful, especially at Disneyland. I don't know why the Disneyland portraits just look so much more appealing to me as a whole compared to the ones at Walt Disney World, but my favorite can be found at Walt Disney World. One that you can sort of walk past slowly, take time to admire, and that portrait is of the Mariner. The Mariner originated in a piece of Mark Davis concept art as a portrayal of Captain Gore, the original concept for the owner of the Haunted Mansion, a former pirate turned current ghost. Originally, Captain Gore had much more of a black beard, sort of a jolly pirate, big burly man aesthetic to him, but over time he got thinner and became less of a pirate and more of just a sailor. Various aspects of the original Captain Gore storyline would be kept in the final version of the Haunted Mansion, including the ship weather vane on top of the Disneyland mansion, the spyglass that could be found on the second floor balcony, and of course when the Haunted Mansion eventually opened at Walt Disney World in 1971, 2 years after Disneyland, the original concept for the Mariner, or Captain Gore, was recycled into a new portrait that could be found in the Doom Buggy loading area of that version of the mansion. Eventually, when Walt Disney World would open their interactive queue, the Mariner would officially receive a full name. His name is Captain Culpeper Klein, as evidenced from his grave in the queue. Now, I've been telling you the real-life backstory of Captain Culpeper Klein, aka the Mariner, aka kind of but not really Captain Gore. What is his deal? What's his story? Well, to get a little bit more information, we can read the epitaph on his tomb. Here floats Captain Culpeper Klein, allergic to dirt, so he's pickled in brine. He braved the sea and all her wrath, but drowned on land while taking a bath. This guy was an intrepid sailor, a daring seaman, before eventually, probably, I would guess, based on his old age, retiring, returning to land, and one day taking that ill-fated bath where he would sadly sadly drown and die, eventually coming to rest at the Haunted Mansion in Liberty Square. I would like to assume that he was a sailor in New England, not necessarily in New Orleans, because the Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World is based in upstate New York. That's where the house is meant to be, not New Orleans Square, because it's Liberty Square. It's a different place. Now, I do think it's important to note a sort of inconsistency in the character. In his portrait, you can see a shipwreck in the background, implying that this is how Captain Culpeper Klein died, while on his tomb out in front of the mansion, it says that he drowned in the bath. Whether this is just a strange inconsistency, he survived the shipwreck, went home, and then drowned in the bath, or if these are two completely different characters, I'm going to leave that one up to you. Something to stew on, something to think about while we move on to our second mysterious backstory in the Haunted Mansion. The Great Hall is one of the best scenes in the Haunted Mansion. No matter where you look, the room is full of energy. The ghosts are arriving for a party. There's ghosts under tables, flying in through the window, dancing, and a very important spirit playing the organ. Known as the organist, this character has actually recently gotten an official canon name, Victor Geist. I say recently, he got the name in 2016, which sounds recent in my head, but it was actually almost 10 years ago, so not exactly recent. Upon entering the ballroom, you can hear the melody of Grim Grinning Ghosts being played on an organ, much louder and much quicker than you have previously in the ride. If you haven't noticed, you can hear Grim Grinning Ghosts sort of following you all throughout the ride, playing in different ways and different tones, even after this point, but they each have their own different sort of style. And the one that you can hear being played in the background right now is played by Victor Geist and all of the heads floating out of the organ. I don't quite know if they're singing it or if they're trapped in there and Victor is freeing them using the keys on the organ, but either way, they're coming out of it. The heads are actually banshees from Irish folklore who famously scream when they are near you, but so I don't know if they're screaming the song or if they're silent. Again, it's very unclear. However, here's a behind-the-scenes picture of them. Look how many they are. They're on a big pinwheel. It's kind of funny. Now, going back to Walt Disney World's interactive queue for a second, if you think that this organ in the interactive queue is the tomb of Victor Geist, I wouldn't blame you. However, as the resident Haunted Mansion lore expert, maybe, I don't know, depending on if you think I am, I do not think that this tomb belongs to Victor. It's labeled Ravenscroft. Ravenscroft is the name on the tomb, and even though it resembles an organ, Victor Geist is not named Ravenscroft. However, there is a character in the graveyard scene who bears the resemblance to Thurl Ravenscroft, one of the singing busts, specifically Uncle Theodore, the one who everybody thinks is Walt Disney. It's Thurl Ravenscroft, but the character's name is Uncle Theodore. This could be Uncle Theodore's grave, but it's certainly, in my opinion, not Victor's. Also known as Herr Victor Geist, he is of German descent and actually is voiced by D. Bradley Baker. You can hear him here in the Haunted Mansion Phantom Radio app. This is an app that is no longer in existence, but around 2016, Disney released a sort of scavenger hunt app for the Haunted Mansion. Anyway, here's Victor Geist speaking.
Running chills. Hello. This music box is very important. It is the way you will send us the measurements of spectral energy that you discover. But before this...
Guess it wasn't important. So that's what Victor Geist sounds like. What's his story? All that we can piece together from the canon stories of the Haunted Mansion, not counting any of the extended media or alternate universe comics, that sort of thing, is that Victor Geist came to the Haunted Mansion from, I guess, somewhere in Central Europe and was hired on as the resident musician. After he died, he was buried somewhere on the premises, and because all the ghosts were gathering for a party, it wouldn't be a party without music, Victor stayed on to play the organ. And according to the Phantom Radio audio and even the old Ghost Gallery storyline, which was made up over the years by cast members, it's not exactly canon, but it is where a lot of the canon ideas for the mansion came from. Victor Geist and Sally Slater are actually pretty close. There's even a hint of some sort of romantic relationship between the two, Sally Slater being the tightrope walker in the stretching room. However, we never physically see Sally in the Haunted Mansion. Sometimes she journeys beyond the walls of the mansion to meet guests outside in New Orleans Square, which is pretty neat. We can assume that the two have something going on, however much of something you can't have going on in the afterlife as a spirit, but you know, something. There's gotta be something there, right? Hold hands, maybe? Can ghosts hold hands? He appears in the 2023 movie, although his backstory has changed somewhat, but over the years, Victor has gotten more and more popular. He even has his own Pop Funko, as I showed at the beginning of this segment, so very popular. Some people really like Victor. He even got a sipper, remember the sipper? And rest assured, as his story continues to unfold, I'll be here to cover it, because gosh dang it if that guy isn't great at playing the organ. Just let me know what those banshees are. I'm still actually really confused about what the banshees are doing. But as I mentioned earlier in this video, it is the spookiest time of the year right now, but soon it's not going to be the spookiest time of the year. Soon it's going to be the most wonderful time of the year, and what better way to celebrate the most wonderful time of the year than being with your friends, being with your family, exchanging gifts, talking over the dinner table, and enjoying each other's company. I got the turkey ready, it's in the oven, takes a long time to cook. Eggnog is being consumed by me on a daily basis. I'm probably down 3 or 4 gallons now, and it's not even November. Still working on trying to untangle these Christmas lights here. Now all that's left are the gifts. What kind of gifts do I want to give this year? What sort of gifts do I want to give to my loved ones, to my friends, to my family? I have uncommon taste, and with that uncommon taste, I'm going to need uncommon goods. It's the sponsor for this video. If you're looking for gifts for your friends or family, or heck, even for yourself that might have a bit of a weird taste, maybe an uncommon taste, Uncommon Goods has you covered. Look at this. What are these guys up to? They're gifts, you can get them on Uncommon Goods. For something a bit festive, maybe you want to travel the world in a culinary sense, but you can't quite make it out to the World Showcase yet. Around the World in 24 Days is an advent calendar that features candies from 24 different countries from all over the world. That sounds kind of cool. Me personally, I'm getting back into Viewmastering, you know, these old little slides that you'd be able to see 3D images through. A Viewmaster holder made completely out of real wood to hold all of the reels. I can't actually see out of it, it's a solid block of wood, but it's a wonderful decoration. I believe this is a Safari Viewmaster reel. I need a Disneyland one. Either way, it's uncommon. You're not gonna find gifts like these in your average Walmart or Target. Or if you want something a bit spookier, because it is spooky season right now, this is the Magic Study. It's a little miniature house. It's a buildable miniature. It's called the Magic Study because it's spookier. It looks like a witch or a wizard lives here. I have another one that's actually a small bookstore that you can see right here. Look in there. It's a little tiny bookstore. It's a little tiny world inside of a bookend. If these sound cool or interesting to you, follow the link in the description right now and get an uncommon gift for that uncommon person in your life. Or that common person in your life. Or your loved ones. How much eggnog have I had today? It's probably too much. And something that I like about Uncommon Goods is that for every purchase that you make on their website, they'll donate $1 to a charity of your choice. You get to choose. Remember, visit the link in the description down below or use the QR code that's going to pop up any second now to get 15% off of your first purchase. Thank you, of course, to Uncommon Goods for sponsoring this video. I really do appreciate it. You can use the QR code that you see on your screen right there. But now, my friends, back to the spookiness, back to the scary, spooky video that has been playing this entire time. We got to get back in the mood here. Ghosts are not real. They don't exist. They're made up and fictional. Let's circle back now to Sally Slater, the tightrope walker in the stretching room with her very own stretching portrait. Sally, during her life, was a very daring performer, often performing feats of balancing and daredevilry that would have the audience shocked. Is daredevilry a real word? We're gonna go with it. She was a tightrope walker in the 19th or the early 20th century and would perform her very last show in a swamp. I'm guessing somewhere near New Orleans because that's where the original Haunted Mansion is set. she would be performing a tightrope walk above a hungry alligator, and unfortunately for Sally, her rope failed. It was a faulty rope, she fell in and was, I guess, assumedly eaten by said alligator. How her spirit came to inhabit the haunted mansion is somewhat of a mystery I aim to solve in this entry. As mentioned previously, Victor Geist seems to have some sort of romantic relationship with Sally.
Even over great distance, they can hear us. Alas, the first one to notice that these mortals were listening in...
Please don't say it. Not her.
Das oopsie-daisy. As you might guess, Madame Leota is not in the best of spirits at the moment.
Nothing to do but face her wrath.
I will come with you.
Oh, thank you, Herrgeist.
We must stick together in this time of strugglement.
The two obviously have something going on, so I'm going to raise you this theory. Victor was the first invited to the mansion, an entertainer or a personal musician for Master Gracie, or whoever owned the house. It's unclear. I do have a few theories about that. You'll have to go further back in this channel's history, but there are plenty of theories of who actually owns the haunted mansion. Either accompanying Victor or after Victor arrived, he met Sally Slater, the entertainer, who would often perform death-defying feats, maybe for a circus, maybe just as a hobby or to earn a little bit of extra money on the side. She was a performer. And so, maybe as friends, maybe as something more than friends, Sally accompanied Victor to the haunted mansion, where one day, when performing her iconic tightrope act, the rope would fail and she would be devoured by the alligator. Heartbroken, of course, Victor would commission a portrait of Sally to hang in the portrait gallery when guests first enter the mansion. Although something important to keep in mind, the portrait that was hung in the gallery originally didn't depict Sally's death. That would have been in poor taste. It was just a portrait of Sally, probably doing what she loved with her parasol. The stretching effect of the portraits is part of the supernatural aspect of the mansion. That's the ghosts sort of taking control of the situation. So no, Victor did not hang a portrait of the death of his sweetheart in the gallery, don't worry. And her spirit would continue to haunt the haunted mansion long after Victor was dead. But that's okay, because Victor's spirit would also continue to haunt the mansion. You see how it's kind of a happy ending? I mean, they're not alive, but they are still together. And yes, Sally's ghost does haunt the actual portrait of her in the stretching room. You can watch my How Many Ghosts Are There Really in the Haunted Mansion video right here. There's a card in the corner. Now, how the other portraits got there, that's a good question. Alexander Nitrikov, I'm assuming, may be a friend or a distant relative of whoever owns the mansion. Again, it's up to your interpretation. Same with the three dudes sinking into quicksand, and then Constance Hatchaway is Constance Hatchaway. She definitely has ties to the mansion. If not the owner, then through some other means. Since then, Sally Slater has gone on to become one of the leading ghosts in the mansion, one of the most popular ghosts or characters in the Haunted Mansion storyline. Lots of merch for her. Like I said, a character meet and greet. She's everywhere, and rightfully so. She's very iconic. One of the first faces you see when you enter the stretching room in the Haunted Mansion. Sally is absolutely iconic, and I don't think that the ghost post will be the last time we hear from her. I think we're going to see more of her in the future. Definitely in merchandise, but maybe even somewhere else in the mansion. But that's a prediction for another time. And by another time, I mean another video. One last time, we return to the extended outdoor queue of the Haunted Mansion in Orlando to the Dredd family busts. Now, if you think your family's a mess, just wait until you get a load of what the Dredd family did to each other. All of these characters killed one of the other characters in some sort of horrible way. And our job as we move through the interactive queue is to solve the murder, find out who murdered who, and who the final surviving member of the Dredd family was. From left to right, we have Birdie Dredd, avid hunter and expert shot. In the end, that's what he got. Florence Dredd, never did a dishonorable deed, yet found face down in canary seed. Jacob Dredd, greed was the poison he had swallowed. He went first, the others followed. His killer's face he surely knew. Now try to discover who killed who. Isn't it whom? I don't care. Wellington and Forsythia Dread departed life while in their beds with identical bumps on their heads. And lastly, Maud, our sleeping beauty who never awoke the night her dreams went up in smoke. Who died first? Well, I mean, just by looking at the epitaphs here, it's explicitly stated that Uncle Jacob was the first to go and that greed was the poison he had swallowed. Looking at all these other busts, who would have easy access to poison? Bertie. Bertie killed Jacob. But then who killed Bertie? He was an expert shot. In the end, that's what he got. If we look at Aunt Florence's tombstone, or I guess epitaph, you can see a flintlock pistol at the top. Florence killed Bertie with a gun. But then who killed Florence? That leaves us with either cousin Maud or the twins. She was found face down in canary seed, and looking at the twins' busts, you can see a small bag of canary seed behind them. They killed their aunt, which left just them and Maud. Finally, Maud would be the one to kill the twins by beating them to death in their beds with a hammer. That's true. Looking at Maud's epitaph, you can see a hammer below her bust. And Wellington and Forsythia were killed, quote, while in their beds with identical bumps on their heads, leaving Maud as the sole survivor and the inheritor of the Dread family fortune. However, she didn't make it out either. Maud would also die. Maud was killed by hubris, or a fire, depending on who you ask, because her dreams went up in smoke, her house burned down, because she decided to sleep with, get this, matches in her hair as hairpins. You can see the matches on the back of her bust. She burned to death, and then the Dread family fortune was lost. Or Master Gracie could have acquired their fortunes somehow, and in respect, or just remembrance maybe, of the Dread family, had all of their busts and epitaphs put in the extended queue for the Haunted Mansion, or I guess that'd be like the exterior courtyard for the Haunted Mansion. And just in case you were ever wondering what that little set piece was next to Phineas, the hitchhiking ghost at the end of Orlando's mansion, that is just sort of a confirmation that Cousin Maud was the last one alive. It is a portrait of Maud, confirming that she was the final survivor. Disneyland's mansion doesn't have that. It also doesn't have an interactive queue. It does have a very beautiful extended queue that has just wonderful bits of story all sprinkled throughout it. Why Phineas would have a portrait of Maud Dread next to him, I don't know. Maybe they were close. Maybe Phineas was a friend of the Dread family. It would explain why they both somehow ended up at the mansion. But the entire backstory of the Dread family is really interesting. It's a family turned against themselves because they all want the family fortune for themselves. And after each one of them ended up dying, nobody in the end got the family fortune. Just a little cautionary tale before we embark on this fun e-ticket attraction. You know, just if you have a lot of money and you have a lot of family members who look suspiciously like Mark Davis illustrations, be careful how you handle that money. That, I guess, would be the lesson they want us to learn. I'm sorry, I had to throw at least one jump scare in the Halloween video. At least one jump scare. Anyway, The Mummy. The Mummy is famously, or perhaps infamously, my favorite character in the Haunted Mansion. I just love this guy so much. He's just sitting there in his coffin, mixing his tea, trying to be understood by the old man who stands next to him. The Mummy is the best character in the mansion, okay? I will not hear any arguments to the contrary. Now, what can I say about this guy that hasn't already been said on this channel? He's easily the best ghost in the Haunted Mansion, but what's the story here? You can see the top of his sarcophagus behind him there in the background. It looks like something or someone moved it out of the way before freeing the mummy. If we look at real historical Egyptian sarcophagi, you can see that the mummy's sarcophagus seems to indicate that he was, during his life, of some sort of status or nobility, perhaps. Usually commoners would be buried in coffins made from reeds or clay. If you had a little bit more money, you could afford a wooden sarcophagus. Royal sarcophagi, on the other hand, were usually carved out of limestone or granite. What is this one made out of? I don't know about you, but it looks carved from stone, very ornamented, almost royal to me. I do think it's very safe to say that he ended up at the mansion, though, as a curiosity, a item for people to gawk at, to look at, because back around the turn of the last century, the late 1700s through the mid 1800s, spiritualism was a very big thing. People trying to conjure spirits, seances, that sort of thing, spirit photography. A lot of people bought a lot of mummies during this time, too. I believe that the master of the house, or someone involved with the mansion, purchased an ancient Egyptian mummy and brought it to New Orleans, I guess, / New York, to be displayed as a piece of a private collection. Something for all the rich people to gawk over. Wow, look at this ancient mummy. Isn't it so cool and weird? And then eventually, at some point in the mansion's history, the mummy, alongside the other 999 happy haunts, would return from the grave. Literally, in this case. A lot of the ghosts in the graveyard are just that. They're spirits, they're apparitions. The mummy's sarcophagus is open and he's sitting up. I don't think the mummy is actually a ghost. I think he's an animated dead person, an undead mummy, if you will. He's also not the only instance we have of the undead in the Haunted Mansion. Not a ghost, but a reanimated corpse. The coffin occupant in the corridor of doors also is not a ghost. We can see his rotted, gnarled hand trying to break out of the coffin. He's reanimated, just like the mummy. Now, we took the Phantom Radio app and the Ghost Post as canon when we were talking about Sally Slater and Victor, so I suppose it's only fair that we take it as canon for The Mummy, where we learn that the mummy's true name is Prince Amenmos. Great overseer of soldiers, son of glorious Thutmose I, who, believe it or not, was a real person who actually existed. Prince Amenmos lived during the 18th dynasty and was the eldest son and heir of Thutmose I, although he would never ascend to the rank of pharaoh because he died before his father did, and the location of his tomb and mummy are still unknown and lost to this very day. But not to us. We know exactly where he is. He's in the graveyard of Gracie Manor. We found it. Tell the archaeologists to call off the search. He's right there. He's having some tea. And so, I suppose, the moral of the story of the mummy in the Haunted Mansion is that grave robbing can, I guess in some cases, be good. You just have to get the deceased's permission first. And listen, I'm not one to collect Pop Funkos. I don't have I think I have maybe 2, but one of them is the Mumbling Mummy. He has his own honored position on my Haunted Mansion shelf because he is the best spirit in the Haunted Mansion. And if you don't agree with me, you're perfectly valid. We all have our own tastes. We all have our own differences. What's your favorite character, your favorite ghost in the Haunted Mansion? Please let me know in the comments below. Also, look what they did to my boy in the 2023 Haunted Mansion movie. Why does he look like that? Why is he so scary? He's supposed to be mumbling, having a good time, and drinking his tea. He's not a scary guy. Why do we have to make him scary like that?
And now, my dear friends, that we've discussed the spookiest and the scariest lost backstories of the Haunted Mansion, it is time to move forward into the great beyond. What do I mean by the great beyond? Well, it means Halloween's over, right? We don't have to do any more Halloween stuff. And since Halloween is over, you know what time it is, right? It's time to get festive. If Disney's putting up the snow on the castle before it's even the week of Halloween, I'm gonna be celebrating Christmas and the holiday season this entire month. What month are we in? Still October. Okay, well that's gonna cause some problems, but either way, the end card is waiting for us. Hope you all enjoyed this Haunted Mansion holiday special. Halloween special, Haunted Mansion Halloween special, and I'll see you all a little later.
Greetings, foolish mortals, and thank you all for watching this special spooky Halloween episode of Offhand Disney. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I do highly appreciate it. A special thank you first and foremost to all of my familiars, I mean supporters over at patreon.com/offhanddisney. You are all wonderful, wonderful people. If you want to join their ranks and get early access to episodes and exclusive access to other episodes, head over to my Patreon. The link will be in the description down below. A huge, huge thank you, as always, to all of my supporters over there. If you'd rather follow me for free, you can on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. I am at offhanddisney on all of those different websites. If you enjoyed this video talking about the story of the Haunted Mansion, please hit the like button. And if you're new around here and you want more videos like this one, please, by all means, hit the subscribe button. I'm not going to say no to that. And of course, a very big thank you to this week's sponsor, Uncommon Goods. Thank you for sponsoring this video. Now, the end card, I believe, is over. To all of you foolish mortals on this exceptionally spooky Halloween night, happy Halloween. And if you're watching this after Halloween night, happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate Thanksgiving. But if you're watching this after Thanksgiving, happy holidays. Thank you once again for watching this video. Goodbye.